Just off the top, welcome Max Gawn, welcome Matt Keenan to the podcast. Max is just pushing his Lululemon drink bottle into the frame as a proud ambassador. You allowed full reign with sponsors in terms of your personal sponsors versus your club sponsors?
Good question. No, there's protected sponsors. So the ones on the jumpers. So yeah.
So how does it work with your with your boots?
Yeah, the boots is a tool of the trade. So I dare say the same as cyclists. I know because their team uses the same bike, don't they? Tools of the trade. So helmet, mouth guard, shin guard, boots. You can do whatever you want.
That's your call. So you can be sponsored by Adidas and wear Nike.
Yep. If your team's sponsored by Adidas, so like Carlton's sponsored by Nike, but they don't all wear Nike boots.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're sponsored by New Balance, who, one, they're not big on boots as well. So in fact, I think they pulled all their boots from Australia. So there's actually no boots here anymore. So everyone wears something different. And then I've been Asics boots, and now I'm Lululemon apparel. And Lululemon's one of the best brands I've ever worked with. Get yourself a pair of pants, Keno.
I've got the pants. They're like tracksuit pants. They look like slacks. You can get away with murder. So it is the equivalent to the mums at the kids' primary school who were wearing the active wear, but they never do anything active. They've got the same pants on in the mornings they do it after school pickup, but they're super pants. You need to get yourself some, Alex.
Well, I've got their full running setup, pretty much. It's the business, Max.
We've dedicated 3 minutes off the top.
It's,
beautiful.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about bikes.
Yeah. Can I get a clip of this to send to them?
I will send you a clip of this. But it's the same with cycling. I believe, from my understanding, with the boots, they can most of the time wear whatever they want.
And if you're Adam Hansen, you make your own anyway.
If you're Adam Hansen, you make your own. But they're so specific. Like if you got team shoes you have to wear, it's pretty rare that they make you wear the shoes.
You have to have the team bike, don't you?
Yeah, you do. Absolutely, you do. But there was historically, say, in the 80s and the 90s and so on, where there were teams that were sponsored by a certain bike brand, but the key riders didn't necessarily ride those bikes. And I've just cost myself a couple of drinks because that was my phone that was going off.
What do they paint them?
Yeah.
Like the tennis players with their rackets.
Correct. Exactly. I think Andy Hampson, when he was riding for Motorola, they had the Eddie Merckx bikes, which were notoriously heavy, and he rode some sort of titanium bike that was made by somebody else, and that was the bike that he used when he was in the mountain stages at the tour.
There you go.
Well, there you go.
Rowan Dennis would have loved that a couple of years ago when he got off his bike and didn't want to ride again.
Yeah.
When he was auditioning for the discus team to go to the Olympics.
Yeah. Matt, how's your days going at the moment? Doing the late shift, early shift for SBS on the Giro.
Yeah,
you probably watch more of the Giro than anyone in the country right now.
Well, I'd hope so, because I'm meant to commentate on every minute that's on the tally, Alex. Because if I dozed off in the middle, I'd be in real trouble. It's night shift. So I normally leave home at around about 6:30 to go into the studio, get there a couple of hours before we go on air to make sure I've done my preparation and ready to rock and roll. The stage normally finishes about 1:30, 1:45. By the time I pack all my stuff up, get in the car, I normally get home around about 2:30. And then you know what it's like, particularly after you've played a game or you've done some public speaking. It's hard to wind down. So, I have a bite to eat, and I have a strategy of trying to put myself into a carbohydrate coma.
Yeah, right.
I have a little bit too much to eat when I get home.
Smart.
Yeah, and then try and keep the phone off, not look at any social media, read a book. I'm reading Jana Pittman's autobiography at the moment. Just started it. I've through chapter 1. I'm ready to rock and roll. It's good so far. And then I normally turn the lights off at about 3:45, 4 o'clock. And I'm waking up at around about 10 in the morning. So just after the kids have been taken care of and gone to school, I get up. And when they're ready to be put to bed, I leave home. So I'm not in the good books at the moment.
How do I get that job?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm still yet to be a father, although hot topic, she is pregnant.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So I'll be negotiating this, some night shift work at some point.
Based on my recent experience, I'll give you some notes on what not to do.
Yeah.
I haven't worked out yet what to do, but I know what's not working, Max.
Yeah.
Is it? Well, Max, you have the same issue Friday night that at Eddie had. How do you wind down after you?
Marvel's the correct.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Marvel.
I still call it. I just call it Docklands to be safe.
Apologies
So
to
do
the
I.
AFL.
How do you wind down?
I'm not too bad, but we got some horrible guys in there. Clayton Oliver hasn't slept probably since the game. yet. It can be hard, but I'm normally quite tired, and I have a lot of caffeine during the day and just before it, so I'm normally quite cooked by the end. That's all worn off, and I'm in a pretty deep hole, to be honest. So yeah, I'm not too bad. I actually wake up really early, so my excitement comes back at about 6 a.m. and then I can't sleep again.
So is it harder to get to sleep after you lose than after you win?
No, early on maybe. I've come pretty level-headed now, and I can just, as soon as I go home, that's my place of home. That's where I can relax, and I feel a whole lot more comfortable. But yeah, night games. So for example, Clayton Oliver, he would be a 5 a.m.er, 6 a.m.er.
Right.
Yeah. So we can't schedule anything in as a team the next day because
of him.
Well, it's not just him, but there's multiple guys who would have just gone to sleep if we've got like a 10 a.m. recovery.
Yeah, because there's the physical adrenaline that's running. There's the emotional adrenaline that's going as well. And if you've had a bad game or you've lost, I'd imagine you overanalyze things, particularly if you are younger and you're early in your career. Whereas if you've had a good game, you've had a win, you can go to bed a lot more comfortable in your own skin. And I think for me, it would be easier to get to sleep.
Yeah, I actually struggle more on a public speaking event.
Yeah, but because that's outside your normal comfort zone.
So I'm more nervous there.
Yeah, so I've started playing Saturday afternoon tennis.
Yeah.
And if I lose, which I did again on Saturday, I struggle to get to sleep on the back of that because it's outside my comfort zone. I don't do it very often, but I do public speaking a lot. So I've got the ability and the experience to be able to switch off from that a little better.
Is on the Giro, back to the schedule you got in Australia with the kids at home, you with the family, what difference does it make not actually being there in terms of your performance?
Being there is better in terms of your performance because you get a little bit of extra information. You
have to say that to make sure you get there next year, don't you?
Paul Keating once said, always back self-interest. At least you know it's trying. You get a little bit of extra information of what the weather is actually like. Like you can get an appreciation for how cold it is, how windy it is. You know how tricky the final approach is on a sprint in particular, what the wind direction is, whether it's a slight headwind, so the sprinter should leave it late. So you get extra bits of information in that regard. Also, when you go into the commentary box, you've got all the other languages as well. So you've got the Belgians, the Danes, the French, the Dutch, the Italians, etc. And they're not competing with you. Whereas if it was all other English-speaking commentators, they're kind of competing with you. But the other nationalities, you can go and pick their brain. So Lorenzo Fortunato wins the other day, and we know a little bit about him from what we can find online, but that's the same stuff everybody else can find. But we go and talk at the finish line to one of the Italian journalists or the Italian commentator. You can get lots of little information about them. We can't do that when we're doing it from Australia. The upside is that on Sunday morning, I was able to go to watch under-9s football, watch the Heidelberg Tigers have a kick around. I was able to watch the under-11s St. John's netball team as well play, which you can't do when you're over there. So there's a lot to be said for that.
Watch the boys go to another draw.
Yeah.
Or another equal win.
Well, they don't keep score on the under-9s, but somehow they know the scores when they're winning.
You always know. And
the score's a lot tighter when they're losing. My son got beaten, I reckon, by about 7 goals a couple of weeks ago. He goes, it was tight, Dad. I think we lost by 8 points. No, you didn't.
Good on him.
No, you didn't.
So, are you going to get over this year?
No.
SBS all year?
Yeah. So I'll be doing the tour from Sydney. So with doing it from Sydney, you're still away from home, but it's a lot less travel days. There's no jet lag. I'll be able to take my bike up. I'll probably, set that up on Zwift mainly because I'm scared of riding on the roads in Sydney for good reason. And then it's just that night shift again. But it's actually easier to do the night shift pattern when you're not with your family. Because you get a sense of guilt of the time that you're missing with the family when you're at home. But if you're not there, you're not there. So it'll be easier to do it from Sydney than doing it from Melbourne, even though I'll miss not being around the kids and my wife.
Been a bit of an easier Giro to call just because there's no one-man breakaways. There's about 20 in the break. You'd be loving it.
How good is that? There was one day, Max, when they've rolled out the start and 2 guys have rolled up the road, one from Bardiani, one from Androni, and every commentator around the globe that was working on the event just put their hand in it. But that's been about the only stinker.
Yeah.
The rest of them have been good. Do you like the breakaway surviving?
I do, but on a stage like tonight, I want to see the GC light it up.
We agree on that.
Yeah,
we agree on that. I want to ask you about last night's stage.
Yeah.
We're recording this on, what is today? Is it Monday? We're recording this on Monday. I'm a bit thrown because the rest day is normally on Monday, but this year's Giro it's been on the Tuesday.
That was weird.
It's thrown me around.
It did throw me as well.
Yeah, good. I'm not the only one. So last night we saw a crash after about 500 metres.
Yeah.
And there was a break that it was a bit more than that, but there was a break then that was already established. And then the race got stopped because there wasn't enough medical support. And then the Quebecer Assos team, they were adamant they were going to get in the breakaway. But then they've had to stop. And then I heard an interview afterwards with their sports director, and he was saying that when there was in that period where it was stopped for 20 plus minutes, he was talking to the guys and saying, okay, stay focused, don't get distracted by that. When the flag drops, you go again. We implement exactly the same plan. What happens when you're playing football and you're the captain of the Melbourne Football Club and the game is stopped and it might take 5 minutes to get a player off with concussion, or they might have done a knee, it's a serious injury. What happens on the ground as you get the players around and bring them together and keep them focused?
Well, probably something similar to the Quebecer boss. They actually it worked for them. They got a third man in the breakaway.
Yeah, they only had two the first time.
So it actually worked. It would be similar. So the first sort of minute or two shock of what's happening around you and just trying to calm yourself down. And then you go into your mode. So our midfield group would probably get together and talk about what we can do as soon as the next ball up happens. It's almost like we get to the quarter time, half time, 3/4 time, but the unexpected break is when leadership really comes in. So I dare say this Quebecer boss has done really well with leadership. I'm not sure who their road captain is. It probably is Campanarts.
Their road captain
might have been Nizzolo.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually. They don't have a standout in that role, but I imagine it would be harder for you in your role when it's one of your teammates as opposed to the opposition. You know,
it would have been
one of your players goes down.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if Quebecer had someone that went down.
They did. Mauro Schmid, who'd won the stage in the first week, but he was never planned to be the guy in the breakaway.
It did seem like Bora were affected by that, didn't it?
Yeah, because they lost their leader, Emmanuel Bookman, and then I thought that it might have been a day for Peter Sagan, and they shut it down. They let the break go, and it was Peter himself that was at the front and saying, that's it.
Yeah, so they were shocked. And then if one of my best mates was out there, let's say Nathan Jones, someone I've played a lot of footy with, and he was in a neck brace out on the ground, then therefore that's where the team comes into it. That's where someone else will try and calm me down. It's an interesting aspect. Doesn't happen much in footy. Definitely doesn't happen much in cycling. But a game gets stopped for a serious occasion. You got to make sure your head's on the ball. Yeah,
so I was impressed with their ability to keep their head on, so to speak, and then go again. It was impressive, Alex.
And did you see Victor go off when the flag dropped?
Yeah.
He was going harder than the final sprint at the end.
He was.
Absolutely tall. And normally that doesn't work. That is he's just going to drag the bunch along, but geez, he went.
So at the end of it, they put together the highlights package of the stage, and you see him launch the first attack. The race gets neutralised. He launches the second attack. That one goes. The breakaway forms. He attacks the breakaway, gets caught, attacks the breakaway again, and then he's coming up to the sprint finish. You put all those pieces together and you think, this guy got no chance. He's cooked. It was fantastic to see him win.
But also, he's been taking the breakaway into his own hands. He's been there all Giro.
Yeah, he's been good.
He's been spectacular, and then for him to win that kick, you would have backed the Dutchman into the way that he was punching over those final climbs.
He showed a complete lack of experience. Oscar Riesbeek. He went way too early. Max, it was a rush of blood.
Yep. You got to. I mean, I was backing in the guys to chase it. Cataldo and Bulk Mollema in the break. You are a fan of Mollema. You've been backing him a little bit in your WhatsApp tipping or whatever it is.
A lot of it.
But he's been in every break, but he doesn't have the final legs, does he?
He's got nothing left.
He's got nothing left. Him and George, they're the climbers that are in the breaks at the moment, and they're not getting the job done. So it's impressive when you're right away from climbers.
Yeah. It was really good. But you're right about Mollema. I have been backing him. He's been in every breakaway. He's been in too many. He needs to have a rest. But what the heartbreak for George Bennett when he was in with a chance to win that stage of the Zoncolan, and he just doesn't have the petrol tickets. He's not at his best. But one of my favourite images of this year's Giro is Bennett going back down the Zoncolan and riding up with Eduardo Affini, who'd done the work for him in the breakaway.
How about his words with Brambilla?
Oh, that was red hot.
I didn't know George was a fiery customer.
Oh, yeah.
He is.
He's got white lines, like the red mist comes down.
Yeah, right.
Which to your point, he in his post race interviews pretty calm. It was a couple of little cheeky jabs at him, but when he's on the bike, he's an animal. But that's been the treat that we've had throughout this Giro. It's just been breakaway races. If you need a cycling and you want to learn about how to ride in a breakaway, you just watch all the different scenarios unfold over the last 15 stages.
There was about 4 stages in a row there where the break took about 60k to get going.
Yeah,
and I thought that was going to be the trend for the rest of the tour. Last night was phenomenal. It was over like that. There was 10 seconds, then the break was formed. But those stages, the petrol tickets that must be going to the guys at the back of the peloton, 60k trying to keep a break. And how annoyed would you get when you think the break is gone and then one more guy attacks?
Well, that's where we need like the equivalent to stump mic.
Yeah.
You know, some of the stuff you pick up
just to hear them
from out in the cricket. You know, like Joe the cameraman said, can't bat, can't bowl. Yeah. Of course it was Joe the cameraman.
When they've blocked the road and one little sneaky confidence guy gets through the gap, I'd be infuriated.
But it's also showing, like, I think this is one of the things that I don't think you can understand from watching the sport on TV is how hard it is to get in the breakaway. But these stages where I think there was one where it didn't go till there was 100k to go.
Yeah.
Like,
and then they got caught with 400 metres to go. Uh-huh. That was the day that Bernal won. Kuhn Bowman got caught with 400 metres to go, and he finished 31 seconds behind.
Is that the only time the groups won apart from sprint stages? When Bernal caught?
Yeah, it is. And then you saw on the stage to the Zoncolan, you saw 3 guys survive out in front when Fortunato won the stage, and then Bernal was going from the group and he caught Mollema. It was then Mollema and then Yates. Like they had 6 minutes at the bottom of the climb and most of them got caught.
We were joking about Mollema and Bennett before. They're actually both top 20 in GC just from the amount of breaks they've been in.
It's a fair effort. It is good. And if Mollema went there saying, I'm not interested in riding the general classification. I'm just going to go and try and win some stages. He also said that he hasn't been selected yet for the Olympic Games, but if the circumstances are normal and they do the right thing, I will be. Putting pressure on the selectors.
Good on him. The Australian selections came out. Richie was the main headline there, and Hagee.
Hagee, Richie, Rowan, and Cam Meyer.
Yes.
Cam Meyer in a quasi-track road roll.
Has there been a course
out
there yet?
The course is really hard.
It suits a climber?
Yeah, it's a climber's course, 100%. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how Richie goes because he doesn't have a great track record in one-day races. Yep. But I feel like Richie's going to ride this season with pretty much no pressure. He's had that achievement of finishing on the podium at the Tour. That has been a big release for Richie, I think. He goes to Ineos. They're looking at everybody else. I think he can ride with some real freedom and we'll see a much more relaxed Richie. And you know him way better than either of us. A relaxed Richie is a far more better performed Richie Porte.
The most successful Richie Porte.
Yeah.
As shown by last year's Tour. What from the inside, is the Olympics still going ahead? Still ticking along as they say?
You on the inside?
I consider him to be on the inside.
You're on the inside.
Yeah, the inside of what?
you're in the world. You're in the world of cycling. Official media.
You're getting some intel that we're not.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have a hit of tennis every now and then with James Tompkins.
Yes, that's good.
See, that's inside.
That's a way in.
Who's IOC, and every time I ask him, he goes, "Oh yeah, it's happening." So I don't know. I'm not buying that.
The skateboarders just got pulled.
Yeah.
Well, there was a bunch of COVID positives with the skateboarders.
Yeah, within the skateboarding team.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing the freestyle BMX because I met a couple of them up in Brisbane recently, and then watching their stuff on Instagram, you don't know if you've got your phone up the right way because most of the time they're up in the air upside down. They're awesome. Yeah, it's impressive. I hope the Olympics do go ahead, but if you're an Olympian, what a strange experience it would be.
It's so weird.
Because the big thing as a kid growing up, one of the things that I loved about the Olympics was the opening ceremony and the closing ceremony and the bringing all the athletes together.
The athletes' village.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not going to have that experience, Max. It's going to be really strange.
If it's your only Olympics, you kind of feel bad for them, don't you? It was kind of like when we played West Coast in round 1 last year. That was pre-COVID. There was just one round. And we were in an empty stadium and there was 5 guys debuting that day. And I was kind of like, geez, I hope this isn't their only experience of football.
Imagine that being your only match.
Well, one of them, Toby Bedford, a young Melbourne player, he's played that game and a game up in Cairns where there was about 1,000 people and it was raining. So that's his 2 games of football.
So he's going to get a bigger crowd if he plays Heidelberg versus Montmorency.
Correct. So similar. I do feel for the Olympians. Like I've felt for footballers playing in front of no crowds, but not many Olympians go to 2, I dare say. I think 1's the average, I would say.
It would be. And Robbie McEwen talks about this 8-year window, that most athletes have at best an 8-year window for where they can be at their absolute peak. And if you're lucky, that can be 3 Olympic cycles.
Yep.
But for most people, it's not. So, and if you miss your cycle, your opportunity, it'd be devastating. Absolutely devastating. Yeah, be tough. Actually, Cam Meyer tells a great story about the food hall. So his only Olympics so far was in Beijing. And he said he was lining up to get some food, and there was a small Aussie guy that was behind him, and then a bunch of big British guys came and pushed in. And the little Aussie guy chirped up. He said, "Hey, get to the back of the queue." And they said, "We're not going to the back of the queue." He said, "Get to the back of the queue." They said, "Nah." And he bopped one of them right in the chin. He went down like a sack of potatoes. Welterweight boxer. Cameron Meyer's story is, in the food hall at the Olympic Games, everybody is the best at something in the world. So be careful.
We've gone off tangent a little bit, but is the Olympics after the Volta?
No, before. So it comes after the tour.
After the tour.
So would anyone who's going to the Olympics pull out a tour early? Is that what we're thinking?
It has happened in the past. Mark Cavendish has done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Caleb gets absolutely ribbed for abandoning the Giro after winning 2 stages. And then all the other sprinters have gone home now anyway after stage 13, but there's no criticism of them. Double standards. It was schoolyard pile-on. And you would have experienced this in your role in the public eye. When the media builds up some momentum, when social media builds up momentum, it's hard to stop it.
It is. I mean, there's more and more coming out now. I think Mitch Duncan did something on the weekend, and he screenshotted a lot of the posts that he got. He got about 20 people. I think he might have been one short of a multi or something like that. And the amount of garbage that he was getting via social media, I'm presuming Caleb would have had some very angry Italians. Tim Merlier, the L% in Phoenix, he left, and now he's racing in a race tonight, I think.
Yeah, he is.
So he's freshened up beautifully.
Recovered okay.
When you've got Eddie throwing criticism, though, at you,
that's the one that carries weight. So it's kind of like...
it doesn't.
Lee Matthews in football is the one. If Lee Matthews throws something, he's the best there ever is, apparently.
Just ask him. Yeah. But Eddie Merckx, he got kicked out of the Giro because he tested positive for amphetamines. And if I was Caleb Ewan, that would be my return of serve.
Yeah, they don't return serve with the drug chat much, the cyclists. They tend to keep it.
Yeah, which was part of the problem with the Omerta back in the 90s and the early 2000s, and maybe they should.
Correct.
So if you're going to throw stones, be careful of how much glass you've got in your house.
Before we get on to the sprinters, talking about returning serve, I'm not sure if you saw, I can't even remember the race name though, but Rob Stannard and Daryl Impey going out. Did you see the final sprint?
I saw he fell over, Rob.
Fell over.
Is that an understatement?
Yeah, that's one way of talking. It's probably one way of describing it.
He was introduced to the bitumen.
Yeah.
He was riding well.
He was. Yeah.
But he returned serve when so Daryl's gone off his sprint line.
It was Daryl's fault.
It's not a straight up and down sprint, but he didn't chop him. It wasn't Buhani going at it. But geez, Rob Stannard ripped into him.
Oh, did he?
Just while Daryl's flat. It was good.
Yeah.
It was good.
But the commentators were saying that's a bad look for Rob Stannard. He shouldn't be doing that. They were all jumping to the defence of Daryl Impey, who had actually caused the fall. And Daryl wouldn't have done it deliberately, but he did cause the fall. And Rob Stannard didn't throw any punches, didn't lay hands on him. He just gave him a verbal serve. And I've watched plenty of AFL, Max, and I love it when they're doing a little bit of puncher jumping, pushing around, then someone kicks a goal and he gives a serve to his opponent on the way back. It's part of the game.
They'd be former teammates.
They are former teammates. And I think, now I'm interested in your view on this.
Yes.
As former teammates, I think Rob Stannard was more comfortable getting lippy with Daryl as a former teammate than if it wasn't a former teammate. And what about when you come up against a former teammate that's, been pretty significant at the club?
Jesse Hogan and I had words last year. It's one of his first games back for Fremantle up in Cairns. We lost that game, and I think I didn't go hard enough in one of the contests, or maybe I dropped a mark. And Jesse was the one to remind me. And Jesse's had a pretty poor 3 years in terms of trying to get himself out in the park of injuries and whatnot. And I just told him that I couldn't believe that he was the one that was giving me the advice. But then, so we were fiery. But then after the game, it was more we had to make up. Yeah. So if I had a fight with Tex Walker on the weekend, after the game, I wouldn't try and make up. But the fact that it's a past player, and Jesse I was quite close with, we went at each other, and then after the game, all good.
So what I find interesting is after a game, like I watched the end of yesterday's game with Port Adelaide and Collingwood. I watched the last quarter of that, and Collingwood lose by a point. And then you see the players together after the game, shaking hands, doing the right thing. It's good for young kids to see. And you see a Collingwood player, for example, having a bit of a joke and a bit of a laugh. A lot of fans get upset about that. Don't you care that you've lost by a point? They're big on that, aren't they? But nobody cares more than the athlete in any sport. And for all the media scrutiny that you might get in your role, I don't reckon there's anybody putting more pressure on Max Gawn than Max Gawn.
It's a unique time of the week when you know someone in the opposition team, you haven't spoken to him all week, and then in front of 40,000 people that are still at the ground with the lights on at the MCG, the game's done, you can talk to a high school friend or something like that. It's a pretty unique moment. I actually had some great on-field banter on the weekend. Tex Walker got a $2,000 fine last year for hitting me in the head. So I was going for a mark and he came with a late spoil and got me in the head. And I was quite angry that day. I got targeted that day. I'm not sure if you remember the game. There was a young fellow who was targeting me all game. So this year I wanted to remind Tex. So we got near each other pretty early on. I came out of a stoppage and went back to him and I was calling him like soft or whatever it was. I said, you hit me in the head, like, and obviously a lot more words than that. Yep. And he goes, best $2,000 I've ever spent. I'm like, you got me there. Good one.
We're having a verbal stoush with some fun. They come with a one-liner every now and then you go, not bad.
I said to her, I went, yep, well done.
But you guys, it seems like footy players are more, they grew up with it. It's throughout the entire of their career. Cyclists are pretty precious.
What do you mean?
And I think cyclists hold grudges more. They wouldn't chat it out after the end of the stage. I think they'll hold on to it. And even the way that it's presented in the teams, the way they communicate. I think I actively read Mitchelton Scott's presser after it, and I was like, oh no, Rob apologised that these things happen, and everyone's still friends. And it was in the AFL. It just seems like it's hard and fast when it's on.
AFL is slightly different in that point. One, because they all went to school together in AFL. They all played high school footy together.
Speak the same language.
Everyone's basically Victorian and
similar
private school.
cultures.
Yeah, similar cultures where if you go European, there is a language barrier there.
I think the biggest difference is that in AFL or might be basketball or netball or soccer, it's 2 teams. Whereas in a bike race, there's 20 teams. Or more. So I think it's a little different. And then you're on the field of play and you're going off the ground. Whereas at a bike race, you go across the finish line and everybody's scurrying off to their buses and so on. I actually think it's more difficult to deal with after a bike race than it is after a football match.
There's 29 teams in there, and then 9 teams at Movistar.
They're all right for themselves.
Individuals.
Very good. That's like the $2,000 that Tex spent last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sprinters, let's just touch on the sprint stages we've seen. I think Caleb was the fastest by far.
Yep.
No one.
We didn't get to see him and Merlier in a good one-on-one battle.
Genuine drag race.
Yeah, we didn't see that before they left.
Caleb would have won.
Yeah, I think Caleb would have won.
Yeah. Caleb was world class, and like we talked about in the podcast we did with Jason, there was no free wins. There was no Caleb delivered to the line.
He did get better work in the stage where Gavilia went early.
Yeah.
He had the boost. Yeah.
He was fantastic.
Yeah.
And he was caught on the front a long way out and he was really patient and he made sure that Caleb didn't end up drifting too far back in the group. Yeah. But he was really good, Jesper de Boost. And interesting, de Boost and Kluger are both out of the Giro as well. They'll be recovering for the tour. Yeah. But that doesn't get any coverage.
Yeah.
They don't need a bus anymore, do they?
No. They're in a Tarago.
Yeah. Well, they don't even need a Tarago. Merlier.
Yeah.
Caleb, early doors. The team butchered the stage. They were
he was sliding back and back
way out the back. But, geez, Merlier took that opportunity. Like, you've never seen. Just grasped it, took it on, and crunched that final sprint.
I'm slowly becoming an Alpes and Phoenix man. I like what their team's about.
Because you thought of them at this time last year as a one-man team.
Correct.
But they're not anymore. And they got second in last night's stage, but they had 2 guys in the breakaway. They've been really active. They're not a World Tour team, but they're racing better than some of the World Tour teams.
Yeah. And
do you think, okay, so just on that, with Mathieu van der Poel, he's not at the Giro, but his presence is felt within the team. I reckon that has a bit of an influence on the vibe within the team, even when he's not there.
I saw a team list when I was going through who's in the early team list for the Tour, and Van der Poel is written down on their Tour team.
Yeah, great.
And that would, therefore, there'd be no boring breakaway given 15 minutes because Alpes and Phoenix will go for every stage win they can, and that'll light the Tour up. Absolutely light. And then they'll have, I think Jasper Philipsen is their sprinter going to the Tour as well, so then they've got their sprinter there as well.
Yeah, you think they're inspired by what Van der Poel does, but also when they see an opportunity of a team sheet without him on it, going, "Oh,
this is my one chance.
I can actually win something here."
I'm not just carrying water bottles today.
Yeah. Have you had anything to do with them? Just the team itself? Like, no. I don't know anything about them.
Are they Dutch?
They're Belgian.
Belgian.
Yeah, and no, I've had no interaction with them at all because they've only really grown in the last 2 years to this level, and I haven't been in Europe since March of last year because of COVID. So I've had no interaction with them. But if I was Canyon and I was sponsoring that team, I'd be pretty happy because I'd be able to do one ad with one guy. Yep. You put Van der Poel on the road bike, on the mountain bike, on the cross bike. What I want him to do, he needs to ride the Dutch National Track Championships just to ride the points race or the scratch race because he'd win it. And then he's won in just about every discipline. Maybe he just needs to get on a BMX as well. Pretty cool.
He's on a Zwift ad, isn't he?
Yeah, he's on a Zwift ad as well.
He's a Zwift guy. Yeah. Where I think they do that exact same thing. They show him
on
through
all the different
disciplines.
There's
Zolo.
What do you make of Groenewegen?
Groenewegen.
Yeah, that's
interesting.
Interesting.
He wasn't out of the mix.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he was non-existent, but he was racing the Italian Tier 2 sprinters.
So we were speaking to Jason about this as well, Keno.
Yep.
You can help out here. It's the sprinters, the ones that are winning, like Cavity's best and Caleb. It's the instinct, that last little bit of instinct that's getting them the win, not the speed. So I'm sure Gruner's like I know him. Groenewegen's getting unbelievable gym numbers and Wattbuck numbers or whatever he's doing, Zwift numbers. But it's that last little bit of instinct that he's probably missing that it might take a while.
It would be second guessing himself because he hasn't been in the environment for a while. And the great Dutch sprinter, John Paul van Poppel, he won the green jersey back in the 80s. I interviewed him once about it. And I said, what's going through your mind in the last couple of kilometres on a sprint finish stage? He said, when my form's not good, everything. When my form's great, nothing.
Yep.
And I think at the moment, Groenewegen is thinking, whereas Caleb, particularly on the second stage win that Caleb took, he didn't think, he just trusted his judgment and he went with it. And I'm sure that if you've had a stint out in football with injury,
same thing.
You second guess yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the deal with Dylan Groenewegen. And I'm happy to see him back. He's done his time.
But a good start.
Yep.
I think a rock solid start. A win would have been exceptional.
Yeah.
A win would have been exceptional.
Well, he could have got one if he stuck around.
If he played Viviani's game of just hang on as long as I can.
Can we talk about Viviani?
Viviano Gaviria is going to get a win out of default in stage. Is it stage 18?
Well,
the sprint stage?
Let's talk about Cofidis as a squad.
Yep.
They've got to win.
They've got to win.
Yes.
That is humongous for a team that's been dry for, how long have they been out of a Grand Tour win now? Years.
Yeah, they had a win at the Vuelta a few years ago. They haven't had a win at the Tour since 2008. And it was interesting, the stat going around about, this is your first win at the Giro d'Italia for 12 years. They went 10 years without riding it, though. Yeah. Everyone forgot that part. Right. But, so to Viviani, so Victor Lafay wins a stage for that team, but Viviani's been hired as the sprinter to win stages, and he hasn't won. So I think that team management would be really happy. Most of the other guys on the team that aren't involved in the lead-out for Viviani would be really happy. It would take the pressure on them. But I think that it would actually increase the pressure on Viviani because he was hired to win.
What's your take on quick-step sprinters that leave? They don't seem to have... Is it purely the train of quick-step?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the train, and it's the confidence that comes with it. So particularly when you've got Michael Morkov or Murku doing the lead out for you, you could put a blindfold on and just do what he tells you to do. He should be paid more than the sprinter just about. And he's recently just extended his contract by 2 years.
So Bennett's leaving though?
Yeah, not by Bennett's choice.
Okay.
Yeah, so and I think he might end up back at Bora. That's the rumour. He might end up back there because Peter Sagan is leaving. And it'll be really interesting to see how he performs when he leaves Quickstep.
Yep.
Because everyone else
no
one has left Quickstep and improved.
So who's the sprinter at Quickstep? Are they backing in one of the other two of Cav or what's the...
Fabio Jakobsen. Yeah, but they're investing hugely in Evenepoel. They've signed him for 5 years. It's the longest contract they've given anybody. Belgium team, Quickstep has extended their sponsorship deal as well. Yep. And for the first time, Patrick Lefevre is going, we've got a guy for the GC and we're gonna back him. On just a separate note, his voicemail message, you ring Patrick Lefevre, which I've done once, and it went to voicemail, and it just says, Lefevre! And then you leave your message. He's brutal.
On Viviani, he's up for contract this year too.
Yeah, apparently he might be going to Iolo.
Interesting.
Really?
Yeah, so because it's something to do with internet, and they want fast speed internet, so that they should get.
They should get someone. They should get someone fast.
Yeah, right. That's I imagine that's going to be a big pay cut for him, and it's going to be it's time he has to reinvigorate his career. I don't want Viviani to go out of his cycling career on that contract on his 2 years at Cofidis.
No, he won't. Do you know him? He is potentially a candidate for the world's nicest guy. He's unbelievably nice.
I've heard him speak. I've heard him answer questions before, and he speaks really nicely.
Oh, he's fantastic. I was lucky enough to do an interview with him at the Tour Down Under, and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, my English is not very good." I said, "It's way better than my Italian, and nobody else is going to understand that anyway." And then I had to interview him for 15 minutes. I reckon I asked him 3 questions. He was sensational. And then he was apologetic afterwards that his English wasn't that good. His English was fantastic. He's a super nice guy. I really want to see him win.
Where's Peter Sagan going? Just going way off topic.
Don't know, but it'll come with a huge pay check, and Specialized will be with him.
Do you think it's worth the money now?
Not like it used to be. Not like it used to be. What I've used to find interesting watching footballers is they seem to get paid more each year as they were getting older, and based on sometimes what they had done, not what they can do. And back at Quickstep, Patrick Lefevre says, I don't care what you've done. I'm going to pay you for what we think you can do.
Yep.
And I think that Peter Sagan will get a haircut on his pay packet.
Mm-hmm.
I correct me if I'm wrong. You guys have probably watched a little bit more cycling than me. Sagan, has he been in the bunch sprint with Van Aert or Van der Poel before?
No.
So we are all writing Sagan off, thinking that these two guys have come and rejuvenated what Sagan has done, and now there's no sprinter can get over a couple of climbs as these two absolute jets. But if Sagan got over the climbs with them, I dare say he's still probably the favourite, isn't he?
It'd be even. I want to see that.
Well, it could be the Tour.
Hopefully the Tour. And Max, I know you're a big one on the ageism that we just continually write these guys off as they get old. And the stage that he won, he was good.
Yeah,
his team was Class A, and geez, I love it when he delivers for his squad, because his squad's always good. And he
I think he'll get some fans in. If that's a battle, if that's a 3-way battle, Van Aert, Van der Poel and Sagan will be the one that people will want. They always fall to the veteran. The age guy is the one they want.
Yeah, they do.
And everyone knows him. He's been around for so long, and he's Peter Sagan. What's not to love?
Yes.
What's not to love?
I do have an email. I've just received an email about the changes to the course for today's stage.
So it is raining?
It's snow at the top.
Yeah, right.
So it's gone from being 3 climbs that went above 2,000 metres to just now 1 climb that goes above 2,000 metres. So they go over the Passo Giao, which takes them to 2,233 metres above sea level, and then it's a huge descent down to the finish line. So that has just been announced around about 45 minutes ago, and the stage is an hour away from starting.
So instead of having 3 dangerous descents, they'll do 1 massively dangerous descent
to the finish line.
So it finishes into on the downhill.
Yeah.
Wow.
I tell you,
there's been some. uncomfortable descents to watch on TV. Just these wet, slippery roads.
Did you get scared?
I get scared. I'm like, the way, especially the breakaway when they've got nothing to lose, and they're just.
What about when you were racing?
Oh no!
Did I pass you going down Buffalo? Yeah, I think I did. I'm pretty sure I did.
Did you?
Yeah, I think I'd want to. I'm 120 gigs.
Max, did I pass you going up Buffalo?
Yeah.
I definitely started first going up Buffalo and finished about 15th.
That's all that matters,
There
right?
was probably 16 riders, and I got beaten by a 70-year-old up Buffalo.
How fit was he?
To be fair, I was scared of Buffalo and rode within myself, and then the last 2K, I said, "Oh, I've got a bit to give here." And
Isn't that frustrating?
Yeah, then I had a bit of a sprint to finish. I'm like, that's disappointing. I should have rode that harder.
It is the most beautiful climb in Australia.
That's the best climb I've ever done.
Yeah, and Hamish was good.
Hamish is a good cyclist. He getting better and better and better. His Zwift numbers, he's not on Zwift, but his
his indoor
platform are incredible. He pushes some good watts.
Okay, I'm not riding with him again.
Yeah, now that we all know that he's a good rider, we got to treat him
with a bit more respect.
Yeah, treat him with a bit more respect.
Put him on the front before the climb.
He stuck on your group for a bit there up Stanley, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Sorry, we've gone on.
This is Hamish Blake.
Hamish Blake, yes.
Yeah. It was the Hunger Ride. So it was a ride for, what was the name of the organisation? The Hunger. Yeah, they feed people that don't have enough money to put food on the table. Really important ride. Hunger Ride it was called. It was good.
And I got
the
to
Food
ride,
Bank Victoria.
I got to ride with Keno for, was it 2 seconds?
It was fun, Max. I liked it.
After his big year on the Zwift too.
Yeah,
so he's in good nick. He was in good nick.
COVID did my power numbers. You know,
I was fresh off Mad Monday.
That's right. To get him while he was vulnerable, Alex. So who else do we want to talk about?
The sprinters are done.
I think the sprinters are done.
Yeah.
The other.
Wrapped to see Nizzolo win
that was
after
the
11 second place finishes.
Yeah.
I mean, that was kind of like, Collingwood winning in 1990.
Yep.
It's so many runners-up medals, and then to actually win, I was wrapped for him to get that victory.
Yep. Let's talk. Do you need to go at any time?
No, I'm okay for now.
You're up for time as well.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm not doing the Giro tonight.
Although,
I will now. If this stop recording is the button there.
Yeah. Rip up.
I'll let you know. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Rip.
Let's talk about the GC.
Yep.
I don't think anyone would argue with us in saying that we talked about the top two tier 1 GC guys, Yates, Bernal, in our preview, and they've been what we expected, what I expected. The change though is that Yates has been quiet, nice and quiet, just thereabouts, not doing anything too special compared to his previous GC campaigns where he's been on the front foot and hunting time. Bernal's been hunting time. We're heading into the last week of the Giro. We've got big stages to come. Could this be Yates's time to...
That's a great setup.
Mm.
Yeah, do you reckon he's doing it? Do you reckon Yates is playing differently to his 2019, was it, or 18?
18. He's been forced to. He said that he was a little unwell in the first week.
Okay.
But he wouldn't actually provide any details on that. But if I had to put money on it, if I had to put my house on it, it'd be on Bernal.
Confidently putting your house on it?
I'll put your house on it.
The top two aside, I reckon there's a lot in this. In the tour, they seem to ride for third to ninth place like it's first sometimes. It doesn't seem like the Giro's got a bit about that.
No, that's a really good question. In fact, you look at the top two at the moment, Yates and Bernal. For Simon Yates, he doesn't have to do anything ridiculous and take a massive risk. But for him to race for second or third is... There's no value in that because he's won the Vuelta. He's won a Grand Tour in the past. But Damiano Caruso, he's normally at the service of others, and he was meant to be here working for Mikel Landa, and his best result in Grand Tours has kind of been like 9th and 10th. So for him to finish third as an Italian in the Giro is enormous. So I'm not expecting him to take a big risk. So he will potentially ride conservatively. Vlasov is in fourth at the moment. He's only 6 seconds behind third place. I think he'll be prepared to take a few risks. Yates will, but Caruso's the only one where I see real value in riding conservatively.
So if a Hugh Carthy goes up the road, will Astana ride to bring him back?
They shouldn't.
they shouldn't.
No.
So there's not that 5v4 type battle.
No, well, that's what really annoyed me on the stage of the Zoncolan. When Astana were riding on the front all day long, Ineos would have been rubbing their hands together. They're doing our job. Take the risk. Don't worry about winning the stage. Take the risk of letting somebody else do the work and try and wear Ineos out. And it mightn't wear them out on that day. It mightn't wear them out on the next day. Yep. But on the third day in the mountains, they'll pay the price.
Yep.
And that's when you try and exploit it. It's like 3 short balls and a Yorker.
Yep.
You just got to chip away at it.
And besides Bernal being exceptional, his team has been exceptional.
Yeah.
Moscon, Ganna, like they've been doing so much work into those run-ins.
I reckon Filippo Ganna could turn his hand to just about any sport in the world.
Yeah.
Surely he's got a good wicket as well, doesn't he? He'd be getting paid
Cash.
some good money.
He'd have to.
I don't think you go to that team on a small salary.
But whatever he's on, he's worth every cent because he can do just about everything.
Well, they lost their number one man, Sivakov. Well, their number one man to help Bernal, and Navarez has just jumped straight in and probably going to finish top 5 in the GC now.
Yeah, so where would they be with Sivakov in there as well? It's the salary cap works.
Yeah,
and like they are, they're just so strong. They've got so much depth. They've got so much money to spend. It's not all about money, but it does help when you can buy the best talent.
I did think they were going to get a run for their money at the start of the Giro, and I still think I was onto something with Landa, Caruso, and Bilbao.
Now,
I thought
that
if
was a
Bahrain
team.
If they were able to stay up and have Tratnik and Mohoric, it could have been something.
Yeah, it still can be. It can still go pear-shaped, but the challenge from those guys that you just mentioned is a stronger challenge than the one from Nick Schultz and Simon Yates.
Yeah.
I guess that is the question too around the squad that Bike Exchange assembled. I loved it. It was one of the favourite squads that they've ever brought to a Grand Tour because there was one guy.
Yeah,
there wasn't these second, third, fourth tier options. But the squad that they assembled was stacked towards them having the pink jersey in the first 3 days. It's got Schultz has been climbing out of his skin.
He's been awesome.
There's been one of their domestics hasn't been climbing out of his skin. Mikhail Niev.
He's been a little
much.
quiet.
Or is he on the program that Yates is going to start to really build into this last week?
They had a fella on GC, the Estonian.
Tanel Kangar.
Yeah, he was up there in GC early on.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. They have to, it's all on Yates. He has to be patient, and he can just chip away at that 120. And then when it comes to that final individual time trial, I think Bernal and Yates will be pretty even, and it will come down to who's got the most petrol tickets.
Would you have your ear to the ground there? Would they be comfortable?
It's Contador summed it up really well once.
Yeah.
He said, when you're in front, it never feels like enough. When you're behind, the gap looks enormous.
Yep.
So they wouldn't be super comfortable, but they wouldn't be surprised with where they're at.
Yep.
Yeah.
Schultzy, just want to acknowledge that point again.
Yeah.
Like he has transformed himself in such Schultzy fashion. Nothing's quick, nothing's short term. Everything just slowly, gradually builds and builds and builds. And now he's around those kind of last man in the mountain climbers in terms of where he's at the GC is the general gauge as to where he's sitting overall.
I always thought it was quite weird when a domestique holds on for GC time. And Bilbao and Caruso they do it every tour they're ever in. It's worked for Caruso this time, but Schultzy seems to be he gets dropped as the last domestic for Yatesy, but then he holds on. He's just I think he's trying to slip into the top 10, just secretly get in there.
Which is totally different to what you see Mikhail Kwiatkowski do.
Yeah.
But when he stops, he stops. But Nick Schultz is cycling's equivalent to a footballer that is a mature age draft pick that makes good.
Yeah, right.
Like he was never selected in junior national teams. He couldn't quite make the cut for the under-23 development program in Italy. Went about it his own way, and he's a really good story.
Where our boy Lucas is the number one draft pick that they've just put all their eggs in and hoping that
100%.
hoping he's coming.
He's the number one draft pick.
Yep. Well, that's what we've got to look forward to over the next couple of months to see how his run into the Tour is.
There's a bit of eggs in that basket. There's Yates, Chavez, and Lucas.
There's eggs
There's
in
a
that
whole lot
basket.
of Stanley Street Social in the Lucas Hamilton basket.
We're not biased. We're
all
completely neutral over here.
There's no team called us or them when you're in commentary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Especially in a professional outfit like this. We touched on Vlasov a little bit. his team is obviously willing to lay it down like they showed on the Zoncolan stage. Me and Max were talking a little bit off air. We just don't know if he's really got it. He just hasn't got that punch or that little bit extra that it seems like I believe that Yates has. That Yates could potentially use.
He's about 4 or 5 years younger than Yates as well.
See, I thought when Vlasov was first coming on the stage, didn't he do some stuff in some one days with him and Fuglsang and George Bennett were away on one of the stages, one of the one day classics.
In Lombardia.
And he had a bit of punch.
Yeah.
And I was thinking he was going to bring punch to his GC stuff.
Yeah.
He just doesn't seem to have it on there.
The Giro is a whole nother ballpark though.
Yeah.
He's been really good in like 1 week tours, those one dayers. Grand Tours that's a
I'm
big
looking
step.
forward to seeing how all these guys that we talk about, Yates and Vlasov and so on, and Caruso, even Bilbao, and those guys go at over 2,000 metres.
Yeah.
Because all these guys, they go away to an altitude camp. Egan Bernal goes home.
Yeah.
He goes home to Colombia, hangs out with his family, and that's an altitude camp. He'll be fine at altitude. I think this could be a day where he puts more time into them. And if a guy like Yates, Vlasov and Caruso can get through and defend themselves and not lose any time, that's a good result today.
Break or GC tonight?
GC.
I think GC as well. But I reckon it'll be a bigger GC group than what we think.
Bilbao on the descent will be interesting. If he's there with Caruso, those guys from the Basque Country, they were born in the rain and slippery roads. You've been there. You've been to Spain. You know what it's like over there. And they've got exceptional skills in those conditions.
There's a crazy Frenchman I wouldn't write off as well.
Bardet.
Roman Bardet. If
For a wet descent.
If he gets up that hill.
He does enjoy it. Yeah.
Questions or anything else on the GC before we...
If the break gets away tonight, I'd like to chuck in a little tip. Not a random Italian sprinter this time. Rudy Mollard.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's pretty good. You know the only guy that hasn't been in a breakaway so far of note, Thomas de Gent.
It's bizarre, isn't it? Especially when there's only 3 in their team.
And 2 of them were in the break yesterday. It wasn't him. Yeah,
actually. I follow a lot of cycling on Twitter. In fact, the only thing I'm on Twitter for is to basically follow cycling. It's hard when you follow a non-mainstream sport. You have to use Twitter to be able to follow it. And Thomas de Gent's quite vocal on it. He's actually a very good tweeter.
He's funny, isn't he?
Anyone who tips him as the favourite for the stages, he replies and says, "Nah, mate, I'm not getting in the break today. I don't know where you're getting your stats from. Don't waste money on that."
Do you just get on profiles sometimes and just wind people up on your Twitter profile and just start?
No.
I imagine do you every time you open the app, do you have tweets?
Yeah, there's a lot. Post-game, there's a lot. And I did some stuff in the game on the weekend that lost us the game. I didn't realise I did, but I went back to Twitter and worked out that I did, apparently. So, yeah, I've got a strict rule that I've lived by for a long time that I don't reply to anything. Yeah. Apart from, obviously, friends. So, Insta DMs and tweets that I don't know the person. I'm not good or bad. I'm just not replying because I reply to the good. I'll end up replying to the bad, and it gets me in a bad way.
And it impacts on your mood. And I saw a great post once from Morgan Freeman, which I've applied to how I interact with social media. Don't take criticism from anybody you wouldn't take advice from. And that coming from Morgan Freeman, that's not bad for me.
It'd be better if you put on his voice, as you said it.
Oh, that'd be so good. I can't do a Morgan Freeman. I can do a Dutch cyclist, but I can't do a Morgan Freeman.
So don't spend any time tweeting these two, but if you send the Stanley Street Social tweet, I'll reply to anything.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Good, bad, negative.
This is the appropriate way to be able to reply to them.
Exactly. Well, so on just starting off the questions, we can tick off about half of them with one question. TT Daly, Mark O'Brien, Pumpstagram, there was one other as well. They just all want to know about Max's boy Traknik and if he's still the man. You were on him so hard pre-Giro.
I knew there was going to be a surprise in the opening TT because our favourites in Filippo Ganna and there was another one weren't going extremely well TT. And I actually had some notes. And Affini was one of my ones that I thought, but I went with Tratnik in the end. And Tratnik let me down, but he rode an unbelievable ride the other day when Contador's man, when they won. Tratnik will be thereabouts. There's a stage coming that's got his name on it, especially the lower numbers, and I don't think he's much help for Caruso in the hills. So He might as well.
He was awesome on the Zoncolan. On that, I assume we saw the Contador video. It was Oscar award winning. I reckon that was a replay hammed up. I just did not enjoy that at all. It was so over the top. And I reckon Lance Armstrong on his podcast will have a field day with it.
It just felt like that was Alberto just trying to make sure that everyone knew that was his guy.
Yeah, it felt a little over the top for me. Whereas there was an interview after the stage one by Victor Campanats with their sports director, Art Verhoeven, who was talking about what they were doing when the crash had happened and so on. And that is just, it's raw and it's genuine and the emotion comes out and he explains what they were doing. It actually made their hair stand up on my arms. It was a beautiful interview.
Quebec are doing good things, aren't they?
They're doing great things.
They're doing unbelievable things. So to all those that are worried out there, Max is still on Tratnik. And
Tratnik will do something. I'm a massive Bahrain Merida man at the moment. Bahrain Merida.
Victorious.
Purely Bahrain Victorious.
Yeah, what a bold name.
Yeah, purely because of the way they race. I love the way they race, and they if Lander was here, like I said before, it would have been a different story for them. So they'll do something. The only rider that hasn't done something for them is the Japanese rider in there still.
Giro, but somebody's got to carry water bottles.
Correct. So he's still riding, doing that job.
Yeah.
We've all kind of touched on this a little bit from WD Samson. Can Nick Schultz or George Bennett reach the top 10 from us watching Down Under?
Bennett can't, Schultz can.
I agree with that.
A few more days in the breakaway, he could bump himself up to...
So 10th is Voss, the young
from
Norwegian.
Norwegian from Jumbo-Visma.
Who's actually riding quite well. But that's the Almeida who might be now a GC person. He might try and go on a break and get some time as well. So they're the guys.
Yeah, he'll be off the leash, I reckon.
Yeah. I saw an interview saying Evan Pole said, stop being my domestique now. Yeah. Off you go. So Knox and Almeida will probably be a chance tonight.
Yep. Yep.
And yeah, look out, Peloton Quick-Step's coming.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you've ridden this climb, Maxi, but a question from Jeff saying, what's harder as a big boy, the AFL preseason or the Zoncolan?
I haven't done the Zoncolan yet, and I don't think it's going to be on my to-do list. I can't... Is it 20%?
27 near the top. You've done the Tourmalet.
I've done the Tourmalet, and I think that's peak at 16.
16. So actually, you know what, Alex? People underestimate the professionalism in AFL football. How many hours do you train a week?
We're full time. Pre-season, out there. 4 hours a day for 4 of those days. So about 16 hours a week you'd be out there in terms of running.
Yeah, and then when you're at home, I imagine, knowing you and knowing your wife, you'll be doing plenty of the stuff that doesn't require talent, the little 1%ers, all the right stretching, the core strength work, the extra stuff. People completely underestimate the professionalism in AFL football. It's
a full-time gig, and to be the best and get to the best, you have to obviously do what no one else is doing, and most people are doing a lot.
Yep.
So to go to that next level, it is time consuming, can be hard. Sometimes you're beating your head against the wall thinking, why am I doing this?
Yeah. And it is whether we like it or not, it is the premier sport in Australia. It's got NRL covered.
Yeah, we're Victorian bias, but...
Yeah, we are. But slightly. And I think as Victorians, we often underestimate the NRL as well.
Yeah.
They're not just a bunch of beefheads that go to the gym and get big and strong.
There is a lot of them.
But they've got
for everyone, there is some smart.
There's an exception to it. There's an exception to every rule. But yeah, I think to make it to the top level in any sport takes a huge amount of discipline.
I'm going to return the favour to Keno Sport now. This is nice. I jumped in a stage with the Mitchelton boys for the Volta.
Yeah.
And I just saw what goes into a stage, and nutrition-wise, AFL are nowhere near what cyclists are at.
Yeah.
Like their ability, and I get AFL, there's so many more things that can happen in a game of football, and you can be unfit and still win a game of football. But in cycling, it's all about your fitness. So I get there's that thing, but we have this carb load the night before, but if you always have spaghetti bolognese, have it, even though there's this other food that I think you go better, but you stick with your superstition. If a cyclist said that, you're having this meal at 11 o'clock, and then at 11:10 you're having this gel, and then at 11:30 you're having this. I was amazed by that. So professionalism of a cyclist in terms of health and fitness is at a different level to where football is at.
Yeah, the attention to detail on that stuff, because it is all about the engine, so to speak. Yeah. And it's treated like a Formula One engine. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I don't know what it's like now with the rich European history within the teams, but especially the ones that are the French, the Italian teams. It used to be one of the biggest shocks though when an Australian would come from a pretty high tech environment, even at the national scene, and they go to Italy and they're like, well, you eat pasta before your meal.
No, they've
That's
caught up.
it.
Otherwise, they were going to get left behind.
I'm presuming Italians would have been still a lazy glass of red because it makes me feel comfortable before my race, like something like that.
Next question. We have talked on the Impey Stannard issue, but Matt is asked, should there be sprinting lanes?
No,
thanks.
that's what swimming and athletics are for.
We don't need sprinting lanes. A pretty big question here from the Cycling Emporium. What effect do you think the COVID pandemic will have on the generation of under 19 to 23 Aussies?
The Aussies and the Kiwis and anybody in the US or Africa will be more heavily impacted by it than the Europeans, because they're not getting the opportunity to go overseas, race junior world championships, race then going into the under 23 category and so on. It will have a much bigger impact on that generation from those countries as opposed to the Europeans. I don't think it will affect the Europeans at all, but it will Aussies, absolutely.
Is there anything that can replace it in Australia? There's nothing.
Well, Jay Vine replaced it last year by winning the Zwift Academy, and Neve Bradbury as well. They happened to win the Zwift Academy to get spots, but that's that's one male, one female. What I do like is the national team they're doing like a camp for the under 19s that would have been selected for the Junior World Championships, but it's pretty hard, and particularly now when you're seeing a guy wins the Tour de France at 21. So there's this higher expectation that you need to get a pro contract at 21. But Robbie McEwen didn't ride his first pro race till he was 25. I think Simon Gerrans was around about the same age as well. But there's an expectation that you would have felt it, that if you hadn't made it by the end of the under 23s, then it was time to come home and get a proper job.
Yep.
So there's a lot of pressure beyond those ones that are 19, 20 now, and I've got some empathy for them.
And it's not just that you feel it, it's that the opportunities dry up. A lot of the teams run till they're 20. You turn 23? Too bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Geographically, although we are in a good COVID situation, we don't have the infrastructure and the races that they have over there. So
I'd feel for any world sport, world athlete that's playing, that's Australian based. Rugby union, soccer, anyone who's looking to go elsewhere with their soccer career.
Yeah, it'd be really hard. On that, was it weird playing in empty stadiums last year?
The West Coast one was, the first one. To be fair, once we got in the hub, we were in front of crowds. So Sydney and Queensland were able to have crowds.
Yeah.
So there was a West Coast one, and then we came back from the COVID and played 2 MCG empty stadium games, and they weren't as weird as the West Coast one. West Coast one just seemed real weird. That was the first one. Their emergencies were in the crowd, and they were making a lot of noise as well.
So you could probably hear, you could hear every word.
They were booing one of our players, which is quite funny. Like, it's an opposition player booing one of our players.
That's normally the reserve of a middle-aged bloke that never made it in local footy.
Correct.
one last question from Kieran, who's been creative on the Twitter. Who's gonna be Max's kiss of death for the last week?
Is that implying that I give someone the kiss of death when I chuck out a tip?
Maybe. Normally your tip's pretty accurate.
Yeah, normally I get a little roughy. I famously
but let's talk. There's normally someone that drops off a cliff for the last week of the Giro. Like it's the tour where people go.
I normally come at someone in CCC, but now there's no CCC. Who's going to fall off a cliff? I reckon Remco.
Lock that in. Max said it, not me. Lock it in.
I think Remco, as soon as there was that moment where he was on the gravel and he ripped his earpiece out, that was it.
Yeah. It's a bit like throwing the phone down on the interchange bench. You didn't want to hear what the team had to say at that point. I actually think you might be right.
Yep.
It's his first time doing a 3-week race. He hasn't raced for 9 months. Huge injury to come back from. There's a few cracks starting to appear, and he's 21 years old. He's the second youngest guy in the race. It's a pretty fair call.
I hope we do see Ineos crack at some point.
I
Just for the race.
I at least want to see Bernal isolated.
Yeah, tonight was going to excite me because there was a couple of climbs before the last climb, but now it's all one big climb. I thought they could have some teams put some pressure on and get Ghana out early and get the Italian. What's the big Italian name?
Moscon.
The other one, Puccio.
Salvatore Puccio. But what it might do, having just the one big climb, it's less intimidating. Whereas 3 big climbs, I think it sends people into their shell.
Yeah,
Whereas maybe with the one big climb instead of 3, they say, okay, let's throw everything at it. We're going to back you on your own if you do get isolated. Let's have a go.
Because really, they can get him down to just Navarez pretty quickly if someone just went hell for leather up front.
They could.
Can't be Bahrain. Probably can't be Mitchelton.
Because we need Nick Schultz to finish
in the top 10. We need Schultz in the top 10.
Unless Mikel's been playing this long game.
Maybe he's just been just resting the legs, sitting pretty. They could be onto something.
Yeah.
Any other smokies for the last week?
No, not really any smokies. I do like the young Norwegian I was talking about before in Foss. I think he's a talent. That's really it. I reckon there might be a stage win potentially for Rudy Mollard somewhere. That's the one I can see as smoky. He was riding for. I'd never heard of the FDJ. I was telling Alex I was a bit of a nerd about this Giro. I knew a lot about a lot of riders.
Yeah.
Never heard of the guy who wore the pink jersey for 4 days.
Attila Volta.
Yeah. I really let myself down.
Yeah. I didn't know much about him before the Giro either. Yeah. I did my research before it and I had a look at a few of his results and so on. But it's been a big performance and he's still hanging in there.
I thought
it's a good story.
I thought Rudy Mollard and Reichenbach was there with their only 2 guys of any sort of name, and then I heard this Volta fella.
Yeah, and he's only 22. I like the fact that he's from a country where he's the first guy from that country to wear the leader's jersey, and he's hoping that he inspires the next generation. His dad was a pro cyclist, rode with an Italian team, and has been a coach of national junior programs and so on. And it's good for cycling to continue that global spread.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And are we tipping a Quebec a 4th win somewhere?
Oh, don't be greedy.
There must be big energy there, though. There must be big energy.
Is there a climber on their team? Don't think there is.
There was Domenico Pozzovivo, but he's out.
To Campbell's disappointment.
Time trialed well again.
Yeah.
He's done something incredible to his time trial technique. He now can't miss top 10s.
Yeah.
It's well, BMC.
BMC it is.
Thanks, Matt.
It's been fun.
Enjoy your call tonight.
Yeah, I will. I'm looking forward to
Thanks for getting a little bit more time behind the microphone.
Yeah, just a warm-up act. It's like stretching before the game. Yeah.
If Bardane makes it in the main group over the climb and there's no breakaway, think of me.
I will, because he'll put the brakes away. He'll take every risk. Good luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you. It's been a good start.
Yeah.
We got your boys the other day,
which
was good. Well, it wasn't a thumping. It was
How
close.
far off are the Carlton?
Extremely talented list.
I've been hearing that for 4 years, Max.
Sorry, I can't believe I said that.
Oh my God, Alex is talking in cliches. He's been straight down the line with cycling. He's thrown someone under the bus. This one's a bolter, and he's come to footy. And seriously,
when you go through, so the captain's run day, we do a captain's run meeting day before the game, and you go through Carlton's 22. You sit there and go, "This is going to be a tough game."
Okay.
And then we got out there and it felt a little bit comfortable, especially in the last quarter. We sort of got away from it. But Mackay's a talent, Cripps talent, Doherty talent.
How good is Walsh?
Walsh, yeah, we tagged him.
Yeah, I reckon he's our best player at the moment.
We sent Harmsy to him. I actually made a big song and dance about that at the first centre bounce. I said, Cripper, he's not coming to you, mate. He's going to the best mid.
That's so good. That is great. Can we finish on that? That's awesome.
We got to finish on that note. Thank you very much to you both for your time. We'll talk soon.